Welcome back. Settle in. That could be a sofa, a bed, the back seat of a car parked under the stars. Wherever you are, just let it hold you. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow. We've been here before, haven't we? Not in this room, but somewhere like it. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere where the air hums with memory. You've arrived at the Dreamland Motel, where stories drift through the vents and the past never really checks out. If you find yourself coming back here often, consider leaving a light on for us. Like, subscribe, maybe even leave a comment. It helps more guests find their way here, even if they're only just beginning to remember. We're also proud to announce the opening of the motel gift shop. Souvenirs aplenty for those family and friends that never asked for them. So please feel free to browse at your leisure at the dreamlandmotel.shop. Tonight's room, it's still warm from the sun, but there's a stillness to it now, the kind that only comes when something strange has already passed through, and everyone pretends it didn't. You're here because, like me, you've looked up, and maybe, just maybe, you've seen something. But this isn't about isolated flashes in the dark, or lone witnesses on back roads. No. Tonight, we're talking about the moments where the sky was full, when it wasn't just one person staring upward, but hundreds, thousands, when towns pulled over in their cars, when pilots called back to base, when governments scrambled jets and still came back with nothing but questions. These aren't stories of contact. There were no beings, no messages, no missing time. Just lights, shapes, movement. Things that defied what we know and didn't stop to explain themselves. We'll travel through 5 such moments tonight, from the flickering deserts of Arizona to the cold, silent radar screens above Washington, D.C., from quiet Belgian villages that looked up in fear to the long nights of the Hudson Valley, where something massive and silent drifted just above the trees, and finally to the present, where the objects are smaller, sharper, more deliberate, but still just as unaccounted for. These are not stories of belief. They are records of experience, mass experience. You may find some familiar, others you may have never heard of, but all of them have something in common. When they were over, nothing changed, and yet everything felt different. So, if you're ready, I'll turn off the lamp, and together we'll look back at the moments when the night sky opened up, not to invite us in, but just to remind us that we are not in charge of what flies above our heads. Let's begin. Let's take a moment to define what we're really talking about when we say mass sightings. This isn't about encounters. These aren't stories of contact. No beings stepped out from the light. No messages were delivered. No warnings, no gifts, no riddles from the void. These are sightings that left no trace, except for thousands of questions, and a strange shared silence in their wake. No contact, no explanation, just confusion. A less than helpful government that seemed curiously quiet. And something massive, seen by many, understood by none. These are the shadows above, seen but never touched, the ones that passed overhead and left everything exactly as it was, except us. If you're able to, close your eyes and imagine the following. You step outside just after midnight. The heat of the day still clings to the pavement, and the air wraps itself around your skin like a damp coat. The city of Washington, D.C. feels heavy, not with movement, but with waiting. There's a stillness tonight. No breeze, no moon. Just a stretch of sky overhead, so deep and dark, it seems to swallow even the stars. And then you see it. Not a plane, not a shooting star, just a light, steady and deliberate, hovering when nothing should be hovering. It holds still for a moment, then moves smoothly, quickly, and then it's gone. You're not the only one who sees it. But when you try to tell someone the next day, they look at you like you dreamed it. But you didn't, and you weren't alone. In the summer of 1952, the skies over Washington, D.C. were anything but quiet. It began on the night of July 19th, just before midnight, in the radar room at Washington National Airport. Ed Nugent, a radar technician, noticed something strange. A cluster of unidentified targets, blips, appearing southwest of the city. They weren't following known flight paths. They weren't squawking any identification codes. And they weren't behaving like normal aircraft. His supervisor, Harry G. Barnes, was called over. Barnes had seen plenty of radar anomalies in his career, but this was different. The targets hovered. They drifted slowly. Then they accelerated. Some clocked at thousands of miles per hour. They reversed direction, made sharp 90-degree turns, and blinked out of radar range, only to reappear somewhere else entirely. Over the next hour, 7 to 10 objects were tracked moving through restricted airspace, including directly over the White House and the Capitol building. Barnes ordered a full check of the radar equipment. Nothing was malfunctioning. When he contacted Andrews Air Force Base to cross-check the data, they confirmed the same thing. Unknown targets appearing on multiple scopes, performing maneuvers no known aircraft could match. And these weren't just blips on a screen. They were visible in the night sky. An air traffic controller at National Airport saw one. A bright orange light hovering outside the tower. It stayed motionless for a moment. Then, without a sound, it shot off and vanished. At Andrews, another airman described a glowing orb, a ball of fire with a tail that streaked into view, paused in the sky, and then darted away like nothing he'd ever seen before. Meanwhile, Capital Airlines Flight 807, piloted by Captain Casey Pierman, was just lifting off from National Airport. Barnes radioed him directly. An unknown object had been picked up near his location. Pearman kept his eyes on the sky. Over the next 15 minutes, he reported 6 distinct lights moving through the sky within view of his aircraft, each moving too fast, too level, and too controlled to be meteors or misidentifications. Like falling stars, he said, but without tails. He'd been flying for over a decade. He'd never seen anything like them. And every time he called out a sighting, Barnes confirmed it was mirrored on radar. They were there, and they were real. By now, the situation had escalated. Objects were entering restricted airspace, veering toward commercial airliners, and accelerating in ways that defied all known physics. But the Air Force wasn't ready. Andrews Air Force Base couldn't launch fighters. The runway was under repair. So 2 F-94 Starfire interceptors were scrambled from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware, nearly 90 miles away. By the time they arrived, the radar screens were clean, the lights were gone, and the sky was empty. But not for long. The moment the fighters returned to base, the objects reappeared. It was as if they were watching, waiting. Barnes later said, "They acted like they were monitoring our radio traffic." For nearly 5 hours that night, the nation's capital was stalked by something unknown, tracked by 3 separate radar stations, witnessed by commercial pilots, and seen from control towers. At one point, a radar target was estimated moving at 7,200 miles per hour. Another made a perfect right-angle turn without slowing down. These weren't balloons. They weren't temperature anomalies. And they clearly weren't aircraft we had. A week later, it happened again. On the night of July 26th, the radar lit up once more. This time, the Air Force was watching in real time. Project Blue Book's public affairs officer, Albert M. Chop, was present in the radar room. The controllers tracked dozens of unknowns, jumping sectors, clustering around airliners, fading out and blinking back in. F-94s were scrambled again. One of the pilots, Lieutenant William Patterson, managed to get close. He radioed in. "I see them now. They're all around me. What should I do?" No one answered. By the time he made a move, they were gone. The press erupted. Saucers swarm over Washington. Jets scrambled to intercept UFOs. The story was everywhere. The Pentagon held its biggest press conference since World War II. They blamed it on a temperature inversion. Warm air, they said, was bending radar beams, creating false echoes, a harmless illusion. But that didn't explain the lights. It didn't explain what the pilots saw, or why the blips disappeared when the jets arrived, and then came back when they left. Even Captain Edward Ruppelt, the head of Project Blue Book at the time, didn't buy the explanation. He called it the most dramatic and credible series of sightings in Blue Book's history. And to this day, what flew over Washington in July of 1952 remains unsolved. For a few strange nights, the most heavily guarded airspace in the world belonged to someone or something else. And we never found out who But new evidence released just this past week at the time of recording may eventually shed new light, pardon the pun, on what was in the skies that night. And one thing will become clear, that the Pentagon's so-called temperature inversions, already shaky at best, is about to be completely blown out of the water. In July 2025, a paper quietly appeared online, titled Aligned Multiple Transient Events in the First Palomar Sky Survey, authored by Beatrice Villarroel and a team of international astronomers and physicists from highly accredited and reliable institutes and organizations. This wasn't a paper chasing myths or folklore. This was a careful scientific search through astronomical archives, specifically the photographic plates taken in the 1950s for the first Palomar Sky Survey, long before humanity placed a single object in orbit. What the team discovered was striking. Short-lived, star-like flashes of light, captured in single 50-minute exposures, appearing briefly, then disappearing forever. Most intriguing among these was an event with remarkable statistical significance, occurring on the very same night as the 1952 Washington, D.C. sightings. That famous night when unknown lights filled the radar screens and raced silently over the US Capitol. Now, backed up by hard data, suggesting something that can no longer be explained away as temperature inversions. These newly documented flashes were aligned precisely along a narrow band of sky, implying a structured formation, reflective objects, possibly located in high Earth orbit, captured in a momentary glint of sunlight. The authors carefully explored known explanations: plate defects, atmospheric phenomenon, meteors, but none fully explained these mysterious, transient alignments. Moreover, these events were found to notably avoid Earth's shadow, a strong indication that they depended on reflected sunlight. This discovery isn't just intriguing, it's profound. Because if real, if genuine, it suggests a presence around Earth, observed clearly in a moment when we were not yet able to send satellites into orbit ourselves. A presence that left an accidental mark in an archive of astronomical glass plates, waiting quietly for decades to be uncovered. Beatrice and her team didn't leap to conclusions. They published their data, careful and measured. Yet even through their scientific caution, the implication is impossible to ignore. Perhaps the objects that appeared in our skies that July night in 1952 left more than just confused radar operators and stunned witnesses. Perhaps they left an imprint in the stars themselves, a fleeting reflection of sunlight, a quiet reminder hidden for over 70 years. You were not imagining things. We really were up there. Almost 4 decades after the mysterious lights danced above Washington, the skies lit up again. This time, over Belgium. Close your eyes again. Imagine you're there, standing quietly in your backyard on a crisp November night. The air bites coldly at your fingers, and your breath drifts like ghostly wisps into the darkness. You've stepped outside for air, not searching for mystery, simply seeking quiet. Yet, as your eyes lift slowly to the clear, star-strewn heavens, you notice something. At first, It's subtle, an absence more than a presence. Stars vanish, swallowed by a shape silently gliding above you. It's enormous, triangular, so large it blots out entire constellations as it passes. You freeze, heart quickening, as three powerful beams of white light pierce downward, illuminating fields and rooftops below as brightly as floodlights. In the centre, a red-orange beacon pulses calmly, steady and rhythmic, like a quiet, watchful heartbeat. You listen for a noise, the comforting hum of engines you've heard countless times before. But tonight, there is nothing. No rumble, no drone, just an impossible silence as this huge black triangular craft drifts with purpose across the sky. You reach for words, plane, helicopter, but they die unspoken. This is something different, something you've never seen before. And suddenly, you understand the whispers you've heard in town, the stories from neighbours about strange lights, the nervous laughter that masks real unease. Tonight the rumours become real, not just for you, but for hundreds of others who step out into the night and see exactly what you see. A silent triangle, hovering impossibly in Belgian skies. From that November evening in 1989 began one of history's most remarkable waves of unexplained aerial phenomena, the Belgian UFO Wave. It would last nearly 2 years, producing more than 2,000 sightings by over 3,500 witnesses, citizens, police, scientists, and even military personnel. On the very first night, November 29, 1989, 2 police officers near Eupen became the initial reluctant witnesses to history. Officer Heinrich Nicol and his partner, Hubert von Montigny, radioed back in disbelief, describing a silent triangular craft equipped with powerful searchlights floating just meters above open fields. Their report was initially dismissed as a joke, yet soon dozens of similar calls flooded police stations across eastern Belgium. Within hours, over 30 independent sightings had been logged, each remarkably consistent. A vast triangular object, silent, with bright lights, arranged meticulously at its corners, and a central, pulsing red glow beneath. As sightings multiplied in the days and weeks following, Belgian authorities could not ignore the situation. Defence Minister Guy Coam publicly acknowledged the phenomenon in late 1989, stating clearly and unambiguously that these sightings were real. They were unexplained and, crucially, not related to any Belgian military activity. This marked a rare moment in history, a government openly admitting the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena. The Belgian UFO research group, SOBEPS, and no, I won't be able to pronounce its full name, swiftly became the hub of investigation, meticulously documenting each case, working closely with police and even the Belgian Air Force. SOBEPS investigators, led by professors, engineers, and military veterans, carefully examined eyewitness accounts, photographs, and radar data, insisting on rigorous analysis to separate unexplainable from inexplicable. Through meticulous research, SOBEPS presented the public not with sensationalism, but with credible data. In a landmark 2-volume report, they catalogued hundreds of credible sightings, many corroborated by multiple witnesses, including military radar operators and seasoned police officers. Yet despite exhaustive investigations, most cases stubbornly resisted conventional explanations. On the night of March 30th, possibly the early hours of the 31st, 1990, the phenomenon reached an extraordinary climax. Multiple radar stations, including NATO's facility at Glons, detected unknown objects moving with astonishing speed and agility. The Belgian Air Force scrambled 2 F-16 jets, initiating an unprecedented aerial chase. For nearly an hour, Belgian pilots locked radar onto unknown targets, which executed maneuvers impossible for any conventional aircraft, instantaneously accelerating from near stationary hover to speeds approaching 1100 miles per hour, rapidly ascending and descending thousands of feet in mere seconds. Yet strangely, no sonic booms were heard on the ground. No visual contact was established by fighter pilots. Whatever the Belgian Air Force encountered that night defied explanation. So much so, the incident became one of the most compelling pieces of official military UFO documentation ever publicly released. News of these events quickly spread worldwide. International media converged on Belgium, captivated by the open and serious manner with which Belgian officials addressed the sightings. Newspapers, TV documentaries, and magazines such as Paris Match and the BBC covered the story extensively, bringing global scrutiny to the quiet towns and fields of Belgium. Theories multiplied. Some claimed secret NATO tests or advanced US stealth craft. Others whispered extraterrestrial origins. The Belgian government even reached out to NATO allies, directly questioning whether top-secret experimental aircraft might have strayed into Belgian skies. Officially, the answer was a resounding denial, deepening the mystery further. In the years following the Belgian wave, speculation crystallized around a mysterious concept known as the TR-3B, an alleged black-budget triangular craft rumored to use advanced propulsion technology, even anti-gravity. Whistleblowers, self-proclaimed insiders, and conspiracy theorists openly linked the Belgian Triangles to supposed American stealth reconnaissance aircraft, igniting fervent debates still unresolved today. However, despite intriguing connections, including an eerie similarity in the visual description of the craft, no official proof of the TR-3B's existence ever emerged. And experts remained skeptical, questioning the plausibility of secret US craft routinely violating Belgian airspace with impunity. Eventually, the sightings diminished, fading from headlines as abruptly as they'd arrived. SOBEPS disbanded after publishing their detailed studies, leaving behind a rich archive of data, analysis, and unanswered questions. General Wilfried de Brouwer, who led the Belgian Air Force investigation, reflected years later. Mass hysteria cannot explain what we saw. The witnesses, civilians, police, trained pilots, remain credible and consistent. We have radar records, military documentation, yet today we still have no definitive answer. The Belgian UFO wave remains unexplained. Nearly 40 years have passed since those triangles first appeared over Belgium, yet the legacy endures, a powerful reminder that the sky still holds secrets, defying simple answers. And perhaps, just as those earlier lights left their imprint upon photographic plates half a century before, these triangles too have marked us, leaving another quiet message etched into history. We really were up there, and we remain unexplained. Less than a decade later, the sky would once again present us with more mysteries, this time over Phoenix, Arizona. Once again, you're invited to close your eyes and imagine stepping outside on a quiet spring evening, the air still warm with the day's heat, a faint scent of creosote lingering after the sun slipped behind the desert hills. You're not expecting anything unusual, just the familiar sky, clear and black, and a net of stars stretching from horizon to horizon. Then, without warning, a hush settles in the air, so deep it seems to erase the sounds of the neighborhood around you. And then you see them. A line of brilliant lights, 5, 6, maybe 7, arranged in a perfect chevron, moving slowly, with intent across the sky. They're close enough you swear you can feel the weight of their presence, but impossibly silent. Their glow soft and steady, like lanterns drifting through an endless night. Neighbours spill from their houses, pointing upward in disbelief. Someone whispers, "What is that?" Another voice, trembling, says, "It's blocking out the stars." You look again and realise they're right. Between the glowing points of light, the sky has gone black, as if a single massive body stretches between them. An invisible giant blotting out the constellations you've always known. The craft, or crafts, move slowly southward, crossing the city like an apparition. In Phoenix, people pull their cars to the side of the road. Children stop their games and gape. A man on a back porch sets down his beer, unable to speak. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the formation drifts beyond view, vanishing over the horizon towards Tucson and the dark desert beyond. But hours later, when you think it's over, a second display begins. A row of glowing orbs hovering motionless in the southwestern sky, flickering gently as if watching, before blinking out one by one behind the jagged silhouette of the Sierra Estrella Mountains. And in that silence, you know the night will never leave you. On March 13th, 1997, thousands of people across Nevada and Arizona witnessed one of the most extraordinary mass sightings in modern history. It would later become known simply as the Phoenix Lights, a phrase now etched into Arizona's folklore. That evening, the sightings unfolded in two distinct waves. The first wave began just before 8 p.m. near Henderson, Nevada, when witnesses saw a chevron-shaped formation of lights heading southeast. Within the hour, reports flooded in from towns like Paulden, Prescott, and finally, Phoenix. The reports all described the same thing: a massive V-shaped object, sometimes called a boomerang or carpenter's square, gliding silently overhead. Many described it blotting out the stars as it passed. By the time it reached the Phoenix metropolitan area, around 8:30 p.m., the sightings had become impossible to ignore. Families, police officers, and pilots alike stood transfixed as the enormous object moved silently southward. Some estimated it was over a mile wide, stretching eerily across the city like a shadow. Others noted its lights, 5 to 7 glowing orbs at its leading edge, seemed connected by an unseen structure. Then, at 10 p.m., a second wave appeared, a series of stationary amber lights hanging in the sky southwest of Phoenix. Witnesses across the valley reported seeing them arranged in an arc or straight line, hovering for minutes before disappearing one by one behind the mountain range. This second event was captured on several home video cameras, providing the only visual record of the phenomenon. What made the Phoenix lights so compelling was not just the number of witnesses, but the consistency of their accounts. It had 6 lights in a triangle, and you couldn't see the body. It was absolutely silent, one witness recalled from the outskirts of Phoenix. It blocked out the stars above us, said another, describing how the lights seemed to be attached to something massive and invisible. Families in Glendale and Scottsdale recounted how the craft passed slowly overhead at what felt like shockingly low altitude, silent as a shadow. In total, over 3,500 witnesses came forward with testimonies, including experienced observers like pilots and police officers. Many were struck by the size and silence of the object. As one man later said, "I'm a pilot. I know just about every machine that flies. This was bigger than anything I've ever seen." For those who saw the 10 p.m. lights, the experience was different but equally mysterious. Glowing orbs hovering in place, then vanishing without a trace. Despite the flood of reports, no government agency launched an official investigation. Initial responses from Luke Air Force Base and the FAA downplayed the incident, stating they had no radar anomalies and no unusual aircraft activity on record that night. Months later, a 2-part explanation emerged. The 8:30 p.m. V-shaped craft was most likely a formation of A-10 Warthog jets from the Air National Guard, flying at high altitude as part of a training program called Operation Snowbird. Amateur astronomer Mitch Stanley, observing through a telescope, reported he could see individual planes in the formation, a detail often cited by skeptics. The 10 p.m. hovering lights were confirmed to be military flares dropped by the Maryland Air National Guard's 104th Fighter Squadron during exercises at the Barry Goldwater Range, southwest of Phoenix. This accounted for the slow descent and eventual disappearance of the lights behind the mountains. This explanation, particularly the flare drop, has been accepted by many officials and skeptics, but it did not satisfy everyone, especially those who saw the earlier V-shaped object. My personal opinion is that the 10 p.m. flare explanation is both plausible and probable. Analysis was conducted on the home video recordings that night, whereby a daytime version was made from exactly the same position, overlooking the city and the mountain ridge behind it. The anomalous lights from the home video were superimposed on the new one, and sure enough, one by one, the lights disappeared perfectly in line with the mountain ridge, indicating convincingly that the lights weren't being switched off one by one, they were merely descending behind the mountain, matching the behaviour of a typical flare. However, the explanation presented for the 8:30 p.m. V-shaped craft sighting I find to be laughable. To believe it, you'd have to imagine a handful of jets, widely spaced and high above, somehow convincing entire towns they were staring up at a single, silent craft the size of a city block. Witnesses described stars vanishing behind it, a continuous black shape gliding overhead, turning as one. No blinking strobes, no roar of engines, just a smooth, unbroken presence. And unlike the 10 p.m. flights, the 8:30 formation leaves no flight logs, no hard record, only an uneasy and lazy attempt to fold a vast cohesive mystery into the shape of familiar aircraft. No, this explanation appears to be a mockery of those that were there that night and saw what they saw. It wasn't the only mockery they faced. Arizona's then Governor, Fife Symington, initially treated the incident as a joke. 3 months after the sightings, he held the now infamous press conference, announcing he had found the culprit, only to parade out an aide in an alien costume. It just goes to show, you guys are entirely too serious, he told the press, drawing laughter, but angering witnesses who felt ridiculed. Yet, a decade later, Symington stunned the public by admitting he had actually witnessed the lights himself. It was absolutely massive. It was otherworldly, he told CNN in 2007. I'm a pilot, and I know every aircraft. This was bigger than anything I've ever seen. It wasn't flares, and it wasn't planes. Symington explained that his press conference in 1997 was an attempt to calm public hysteria, but he later expressed regret for mocking what he now calls a profound and unexplained event. The Phoenix Lights captured the imagination of the world. In the years that followed, it was the subject of books, documentaries, museum exhibits, and countless TV specials. The Arizona Heritage Center in Tempe now features a permanent display about the incident, and a popular annual music festival even bears its name. To this day, the case remains one of the most credible and widely witnessed UFO events in history. While the 10 p.m. lights are now broadly accepted as military flares, the earlier 8:30 V-shaped object has never been adequately explained. So what were we seeing? For some, the Phoenix Lights were simply a case of misidentification. Planes, flares, and a trick of perspective. For others, it was a visitation, a message written across Arizona's night sky in glowing silence. It just felt otherworldly, Governor Symington would later say. And I don't know why people would ridicule it. Responsible people saw it. We all saw it. And just like the lights over Washington, over Belgium, no recovered craft, no definitive answers, only a question still hanging in the sky. What exactly was up there? Let's go back a little over a decade, to another time, another place, where the sky had held secrets once more. This time not over a sprawling desert metropolis, but the quiet hills and forests of the Hudson Valley. Please, close your eyes if you can. Imagine it's a late winter evening. December air crisp enough to sting your face. Breath blooming in gentle clouds as you step outside. The sound of distant cars drifts softly. Homes lit warmly against the cold dark. Your eyes lift upward, perhaps drawn by instinct, or some primal awareness, a tugging from above. At first you only see the familiar, the endless map of stars stretching gently overhead, sparkling points of light, untouched by city glow. But something is off tonight. In the vast darkness, a shape slowly emerges, outlined by an array of brilliant lights, red, green and white, like holiday lights set adrift against the sky. Yet these are different. They have purpose, moving in perfect, unbroken formation. And then you realize, this shape is impossibly large, a gigantic boomerang silently sailing overhead, its wingspan easily the length of a football field. It is so close, so immense, you can make out dark metallic girders crossing beneath its luminous outline. You brace for sound, a roar, a hum, the expected rush of engines, but it never comes. Only silence, profound and unsettling, as if the craft itself absorbs noise, existing somehow separate from the rules you know. Then a brilliant beam erupts from beneath it, bathing the earth in dazzling white, moving deliberately, slowly scanning fields and forests, as though seeking or seeing something below. You feel a chill deeper than the winter night, aware you are utterly exposed, known by something unknown. Then, just as quickly as it showed up, the beam blinks out, the craft shifts effortlessly, accelerating straight up, fading into a pinpoint of darkness among the stars. And as you stand in awe, the telephone rings inside. Neighbours calling neighbours, townsfolk asking each other breathlessly, "Did you see that?" It was December 31st, 1982, and this was only the beginning. Over 4 remarkable years, from 1982 through 1986, the Hudson Valley became the epicenter of one of the largest waves of unexplained aerial sightings ever recorded. Thousands of witnesses, ordinary citizens, police officers, pilots, firefighters, reported seeing the same enormous, silent, V-shaped or boomerang-shaped craft drifting quietly across the skies. On March 24th, 1983, the sightings peaked dramatically. Hundreds watched as the massive object, soon dubbed the Westchester Boomerang, crept slowly over the Taconic Parkway. Traffic halted, as stunned drivers abandoned their cars, gazing upward as a floating city of multicoloured lights passed just overhead, noiseless and immense. Calls overwhelmed emergency lines, and police found themselves confronting something their training never covered. A collective mystery unfolding in real time, observed not by isolated believers, but by entire communities sharing a single, bewildering experience. Witness descriptions across 4 years were uncannily consistent. They commonly described the UFO as enormous, often 100 yards or more across, moving slowly enough for its sheer scale to become obvious. It was almost always a boomerang or wedge shape, outlined by coloured lights, sometimes illuminating visible metallic girders or beams beneath. And the sound? Utter silence, even at close proximity, defying logic, defying physics. The object was reported to be aware of the observers, deliberately shining intense white lights downward, as if acknowledging those watching below. One local resident recalled the awe clearly. It floated overhead at treetop level, utterly silent, lights changing colour together, in perfect unison. I've never seen anything like it before or since. It knew we were there. The credibility of the Hudson Valley sightings was underscored by reports from experienced observers. Police Lieutenant Kevin Soravia, convinced he was watching a massive military aircraft, called nearby Stewart Air Force Base, only to be assured no plane was airborne. Seasoned Air Force pilots insisted no known aircraft could mimic the perfect formation or silent hovering described. One such Air Force veteran maintained, if those were planes or ultralights, there would have been engine noise. It was as quiet as the grave up there. In 1984, skeptical investigations pointed to local pilots flying small, brightly lit aircraft in formation at night. Some pilots did openly admit their prank flights, amused by the local stir. Yet many eyewitnesses, having seen both the hoax flights and the original phenomenon, insisted a fundamental difference existed. One witness explained succinctly, "Those pranksters flew noisy, shaky formations you could tell apart from miles away. What we saw first, no noise, perfect shape. It was solid. Not those planes, not even close." Even today, the debate continues. Was it all just clever trickery? Or was the ultralight explanation merely a comforting rationalization in the face of something inexplicable? Perhaps the most unsettling reports came from Indian Point nuclear plant guards. In 1984, guards reported a 900-foot wide V-shaped craft silently hovering just yards above sensitive reactors. Allegedly, armed guards actually prepared for confrontation, although official records deny any such incident. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission stated they had no documentation of the event. Officially, the Hudson Valley sightings were dismissed as misunderstood flights of civilian pilots. But to many who lived through it, that explanation never quite matched the profound strangeness of what they'd experienced. Years later, the Hudson Valley sightings remain deeply embedded in local consciousness, a source of fascination and lingering unease. The event inspired multiple books, notably Night Siege by the renowned Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and even influenced Whitley Strieber's haunting bestseller Communion, which brought Hudson Valley into the global spotlight. Today, communities like Pine Bush host annual UFO fairs and museums, embracing the region's mysterious history with pride and curiosity. The sightings have become folklore, passed down through generations, tales of giant, silent visitors that remain, like all truly great mysteries, just beyond reach. So much was seen, so little fully understood. Perhaps the Hudson Valley UFO was nothing more than human mischief and human imagination. Or perhaps it was something else entirely, something that hovered in silent majesty, watched, interacted, then vanished into the depths of the unknown. No recovered craft, no message left behind. Only memories, whispered accounts, and that familiar question, echoing gently through the trees, still hanging over the Hudson Valley after all these years. What exactly was up there? There's a reason the Hudson Valley sightings are the penultimate stop on our journey through some of the most famous mass sightings in history. They carry so many unsettling echoes of an event much closer to home. One we all remember, vividly, because for all we know, it may still be unfolding, even now, in the summer of 2025. The dismissive government responses, the accusations of hoaxers, the sheer volume of credible sightings, all of it calls instantly to mind the most recent wave. What many people call the New Jersey drone flap actually stretches far beyond state lines. For our purposes, I'll continue to call it the New Jersey drone flap. But what you may not realize is that the true origins of this saga are remarkably difficult to pin down. There were reports from South Florida, from sleepy rural villages surrounded by military bases in England, from Germany, even unsubstantiated claims of sightings in Russia and China. It would perhaps be more accurate to call it the global drone flap. But as I said, a name is just a name. I'd like to invite you to close your eyes just one last time. Imagine it's late, really late. The kind of late when the hours blend together and the edges of reality start to blur. Maybe this is you right now. You're in bed, room illuminated by nothing but the faint blue-tinted glow from your phone screen. You scroll mindlessly, thumb flicking, eyes glazed. The world around you is quiet, wrapped up in sleep, completely indifferent to your insomnia. And then you pause. Something strange is trending again. This time, it's Langley Air Force Base, home to America's most elite fighter jets. News alerts and breathless headlines. You can't resist. You tap the screen. A familiar anchor is reporting on incursions over the base. Swarms of unidentified drones spotted repeatedly over sensitive areas. There's no footage, just stark still images of the base and snippets from a White House press briefing. The spokesperson's words are careful, clipped, designed to calm, but it only makes the story feel more surreal. 17 separate nights, one correspondent says, voice dropping for emphasis. No attribution, no captures, no explanations. You picture it as they talk. Lights in the sky above Langley, silent and precise, evading the most advanced defences on Earth. Comments flood in beneath the article, some mocking, some concerned, others screaming for answers in all caps. Memes sprout instantly, hashtags trend, emojis fly past too fast to comprehend. And yet the story itself feels strangely still, like an empty stage after an unseen performance. You lean back into your pillow, comfortable, safe, detached, yet oddly unsettled. Soon, you're jolted awake by the vibration next to your head. You're not quite sure how long you've been asleep, but another notification has popped up. This one is from rural England. The familiar rolling fields and dark hedgerows illuminated only by torches and jittery camera phone lights. Voices thick with accents whisper excitedly as they stream, tracking mysterious craft gliding silently near and over RAF Lakenheath. A young man narrates nervously, wrapped in a thick coat, his voice punctuated by sharp inhales of cold air. Honestly, what is going on up there? You lot seeing this? Of course, you are seeing it. His stream makes you an eyewitness from thousands of miles away. Mug of tea in one hand, biscuit crumbs scattered across your duvet. A portal through time zones and weather systems, as though you're standing beside him, shivering under an expansive, uncertain sky. Your eyes close briefly, exhausted. But your phone buzzes again, almost insistently. How dare you not pay attention? Your thumb drags across the screen reflexively, pulled once more into this sleepless limbo. How long have you been here? Hours? Months? Does it matter? This time the video is from Germany. Quiet towns, the dark outlines of forests silhouetted against glowing, hovering shapes. Rumours trickle out of Russia and China. No video yet, only vague tweets and blurry images, quickly disputed, quickly dismissed. Fake clips surge too. Clever AI hoaxes trying to mimic the mystery, muddying the waters, frustrating your exhausted and possibly futile attempts to discern fact from fiction. You refresh your screen compulsively, a cycle of anxiety and fascination. One tap sends you across the globe, another right back into your familiar room, safely distant yet intimately connected. Again, sleep steals you away for a moment, just a fragment of rest. Who needs sleep? That's what caffeine is for. Another vibration startles you awake. How long was it this time? Minutes or months? The timeline blurs together. Your screen offers no answer. Only a new notification, demanding your eyes and your attention. Now it's New Jersey. Drones spotted above sensitive military installations and residential areas. Local residents flooding emergency lines, public officials demanding explanations. You watch news coverage in the blue glow of pre-dawn television, sipping tea long gone cold, biscuits forgotten. Something tangible and uncomfortable has intruded into your familiar digital routine. What a mess. In this strange liminal space, halfway between reality and digital storytelling, you and millions of others become witnesses yourselves. From warmth and comfort, you and millions of others experience an unprecedented global phenomenon, ironically safer and yet somehow more unsettled than those braving the cold beneath strange lights overhead. The irony is indeed delicious, unsettling. Those out in the cold, desperately streaming to capture something real, something inexplicable, are for the first time merely conduits, a kind of nervous portal for the rest of us cozy observers. Witnesses in bed. Yet, even as the screen goes dark and you finally set your phone down, that lingering, uneasy thought remains. What exactly are we witnessing? We begin with Langley, because, at least for me, that marked the moment the air seemed to change. It was the moment the most advanced military in the world admitted it had no idea what was flying over its own sensitive airspace. It couldn't bring it down. It couldn't find the source. The US military appeared to be powerless. It was the kind of story that carried a quiet chill, the sort of security breach that, even described in the driest official language, feels bigger than the facts on paper. In December 2023, swarms of unidentified drones were observed repeatedly over Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, home to America's F-22 Raptor stealth fighters. Retired General Mark Kelly, who was stationed there, recalled seeing craft of various sizes, some as small as a quadcopter, some as large as a small car, buzzing the base, night after night. There were no captures, no identifications, no clear explanations. Privately, some F-22s were even relocated to another base for protection, a fact only admitted months later. Publicly, the White House press briefings were careful, measured, designed to calm, but for those who were paying attention, it was a quiet alarm bell. Something, someone, was probing the edges of America's most secure fighter base. For many of us, the Langley incident became the first story in a timeline that felt as though it was being written in real time, with no way to guess what the next line might be. And so we waited, hair prickling, knowing there would be a next time. The next event didn't happen in the United States. It came instead from across the Atlantic, over US-controlled air bases in the United Kingdom. RAF Lakenheath, RAF Mildenhall, and RAF Feltwell. Late November 2024. Small drones, some described as hovering just above flight lines, were spotted repeatedly and around the bases, all of which are home to US Air Force units in East Anglia. These bases are also rumoured to house nuclear ordnance. They are among the most tactically important bases the US controls overseas. These were core NATO assets, and the intrusions rattled security teams. The British Army dispatched 60 soldiers to support US base security. Multi-layered defences were activated. Ground searches were conducted around the bases. And yet the operators, whoever they were never located. Pentagon spokesperson General Pat Ryder confirmed the incidents, his language cautious but unmistakable. These incursions were not the work of hobbyists. A senior defense official told reporters the behavior did not appear benign. Some accounts suggest F-15Es even scrambled in pursuit of the drones. If they did, nothing was intercepted. And, as with Langley, the episode ended in silence. There were strange suggestions of Russian espionage agents posing as fruit pickers that may have been behind the drones. But of course, this resulted in no arrests. And besides, plenty of eyewitness accounts report the drones arriving from over the North Sea, indicating that these are not the kind of drones you can just carry around in a humble fruit picker's backpack. Media coverage was fleeting, drowned out by louder headlines. But for those tracking these incursions, the sequence was hard to ignore. First, Langley, then Lakenheath. The hair on the back of the world's neck seemed to stand just a little taller. And then came the event that would explode into public consciousness. New Jersey. This time it wasn't confined to secure bases. It began in mid-November 2023, with reports of strange lights over northern New Jersey. Clusters of blinking points hovering in formation, defying explanation. The sightings multiplied, rippling outward into New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Maryland, even as far as Florida and Arizona in the weeks that followed. This wasn't quiet, it was everywhere. Over highways, neighborhoods, airports, power plants. Videos flooded social media and local news stations. Emergency lines were overwhelmed. Some reports placed drones over sensitive installations, lingering for hours. No less than 11 confirmed incursions were later admitted at the Army's Picatinny Arsenal, an advanced weapons research center in northern New Jersey. Rumors swirled about drones spotted near nuclear facilities. The FAA took the extraordinary step of issuing a blanket 1-month ban on drone flights across parts of the state. Homeland Security briefings were convened. Words like espionage and foreign adversary were whispered in Washington. But still, the lights kept coming. Some of the videos were obvious hoaxes. Plenty were misidentified airplanes in holding patterns. Some were even bright stars. But some defied easy explanation. Public officials demanded answers. New York Congressman Pat Ryan summed up the national mood on cable news. The American people deserve answers as to what the hell factors going on. And then, just as the wave was reaching a fever pitch, came a tragedy that cast an even darker shadow over the story. An incident in Las Vegas made headlines for all the wrong reasons. A lone individual, a decorated veteran, took his own life in a violent act that thankfully harmed no one else. It was shocking and painful, and left behind a letter that found its way into the public domain. We mention this only because the letter spoke directly to the drone mystery we've been exploring. And perhaps, as difficult as it is, these conversations matter, because silence can be more harmful than confronting what happened. The letter described advanced gravitic propulsion technology, craft capable of unimaginable speed and maneuverability, and suggested the mysterious drones were connected to foreign powers, possibly even beyond their control. Out of respect, we will not speculate on the details of that letter further, nor will we dwell on the name of the person behind it. Those who have followed this story will already know, and for those who haven't, the specifics matter less than the reminder that behind every headline is a human life, often struggling in ways we cannot see. What we can say is that this tragedy served as a sobering inflection point. The claims it contained, though never proven, only added fuel to an already anxious conversation. In the weeks that followed, there was much anticipation about what the government might say, not least because the incoming president had made promises to reveal the truth about the source of the so-called drones. However, in the true spirit of politics, the truth, as always, remained locked behind a lazy government statement. White House briefings reassured the public that there was no evidence of foreign involvement. The FAA, DHS, and FBI allegedly concluded that most reports were misidentifications. Planes, helicopters, stars mistaken for drones. No security threat, they said. No enemy. But almost immediately, cracks in that story began to appear. State officials and members of Congress, including those briefed on classified information, were openly skeptical. New Jersey leaders reported that briefers described coordinated drone formations flying 6 to 7 hours a night, even in restricted airspace. Descriptions that seemed to directly contradict the administration's public message. Prominent analysts and former officials added fuel to the uncertainty. UFO expert Nick Pope argued that government statements on this are contradictory. On the one hand, there's no danger, yet they admit they don't know what they are. He questioned why the matter warranted a classified House intelligence briefing if the government truly had nothing to hide. Meanwhile, NORAD Commander General Gregory Guillot quietly warned that over 600 drone incursions had been tracked at US military sites in 2024 alone. And while he insisted there was no evidence of organized foreign operations, he urged officials to always assume the worst and prepare accordingly. This inconsistency between public dismissal and private concern shows a government struggling to keep pace with a fast-moving, technology-fueled phenomenon. In an era where every witness has a high-definition camera in their pocket and social media floods feeds with speculation, the default "don't worry, go back to sleep" line no longer suffices. Perhaps it's a sign the dam is starting to break. There truly is no denying that something real happened at Langley, something real happened at Lakenheath, and at Piccadilly Arsenal. Something was moving through our skies, testing boundaries, slipping away before anyone could grab hold of it. And the reality is that the New Jersey drone sightings never officially ended. There was no moment when someone stood up from a director's chair and yelled "cut." This is real life. The lines blur, just as they did in Washington, D.C., in Belgium, in Phoenix, and in the Hudson Valley. I haven't yet closed the book on our latest mass sighting. Just because it's become too repetitive for the news cycle doesn't mean it's stopped. These things rarely end with clean punctuation. They simply fade from headlines while still lingering above us. And all the while, the question keeps circling, unanswered, familiar now, and faintly echoing. What exactly is up there? Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe we should ask, why are they up there? Whoever or whatever is behind them clearly doesn't want to be known. They haven't landed on the White House lawn, haven't called a press conference, or held up a banner saying, "We're here." For many, that alone is reason to see them as a threat. History has taught us that people don't usually land to shake hands before dropping the first bomb. And I understand that position completely. It's wise to be cautious. But if these are non-human intelligences, travelling here from light years away, perhaps hundreds of light years, then the technology they wield is so staggeringly advanced that there would be no need for secrecy. They could simply take what they wanted, steamroll through our planet, wiping us out in the blink of an eye, and still be home quite literally in time for dinner. Perhaps it's foolish optimism, but I wonder if there's another reason. We as humans run nature reserves. We look after species because we've already driven so many to the brink, or simply because we believe it's the right thing to do. And we know that sometimes anonymity is a key ingredient in helping a species survive. You don't rush in and grab them by the hand. At some point, they have to learn how to cross the road themselves. So perhaps that's what we're witnessing. A silent, guiding hand. A presence unwilling to interfere too directly, but nudging us forward with subtle revelations. Mass sightings that jolt us awake, just enough to ask the right questions. Because maybe, without those questions, we really might throw ourselves into oblivion. And maybe, just maybe, the silence isn't indifference at all. Maybe it's care. And so we close the book, at least for now, on another night here at the Dreamland Motel. Thank you for joining me in the quiet, for staying curious, and for asking the questions that matter. If you've enjoyed tonight's journey, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to give it a like, subscribe, and you're welcome to leave a comment below. I really do love reading your thoughts. And if you'd like to help keep the neon glowing here at the motel, you'll find links in the description for ways to support the channel. But for now, wherever you are, I hope you sleep well, and I hope you keep looking up. Because one day, perhaps we'll have an answer to that question we've stumbled across tonight. Why exactly are they up there and not down here? Good night from the Dreamland Motel.